in here is that you're expanding the jurisdiction of people, and as Dr. Duncan Webb suggested, they may well be people living in their vans. And I know that that might be beyond hopefully the experience of most people in this house, but that's a reality in my suburb, that there are people sleeping. I live on a big park, and at the bottom of the park there are people sleeping in their vans in the car park. And what I'm concerned about is the fact that there is such a disparity here in terms of understanding. We know that gangs are often a feature of poverty and alienation, where people find an alternative set of norms and values, which we do not agree with, and is a bad sign, but they find that because they're displaced from the norms and values of the society that we are lucky enough to live in. And it seems to me that by talking about swastikas as not actually meeting the standards, so you can have your Nazi sign, you can have your yacht, you can do that because you're insulated by where you are. We are laying open a group of people whose intimate space, whose only intimate space might be their van, and that is a reality. That is not me being melodramatic. Those are the very people that there will be people in that situation in their van, and we are actually opening the door to those people, having the door knocked on, and people going into that space. Now, that is an issue, and I wondered whether you had advice on the worry about the bias in that situation, because I take your point that there are some terrible things happening in gangs. I don't think I'm ungrounded about that. But I do think there is a real concern about the invasion of space of people who are already fragile in some ways, and in fact it's going to alienate people way more if in fact the only refuge that they have is one that you are invading, and you are inviting people to invade without any sensitivity over what that means for them. So I would really like a genuine answer. I don't want to hear that gangs are bad. I know gangs are bad. I don't want to hear that there are victims out there, because I know that. But I also know that lots of the people in those gangs and in our criminal system are in fact also victims. That does not excuse any bad behaviour or intimidation of others, or rape or murder or involvement in issues over drug issues, etc. But neither is it fair to put people into a situation where there is no ordinary, normal refuge, which is so important to our humanity. So I mean this very genuinely, Minister. I want a response. Did you have advice that this could actually risk invading people's privacy to an extent which was out of kilter? And did you have advice on the comparator to people who may be involved in situations where they have an offensive sign, like a neo-Nazi sign, like a swastika, like those kinds of signs in their houses, but maybe insulated by the nature of their lives and the fact that they live in situations where they're a lot less vulnerable to a knock on the door?
And he didn't answer the question, so we're moving on to Ginny. So let's see what Ginny's
Honourable Ginny Anderson. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Look, the Minister's given us some really good further understanding of how this sort of car provision is going to work. So what he stated, and if I heard this correctly, that you can't sort of like get your jacket up like that on the back window, that's out. But if you were driving...
Sorry. Let's go back, and we will slow that down. Go, Ginny.
Honourable Ginny Anderson. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Look, the Minister's given us some really good further understanding of how this sort of car provision is going to work. So what he stated, and if I heard this correctly, that you can't sort of like get your jacket up like that on the back window, that's out. But if you were driving your car and your patch was on the back like that, that might be okay. But what happens if he was in a car crash, not a serious one, and he happened to slam up against the window? Would that be out? So I think it's really important when we're talking about what is displayed from a car. And I think that it's really important for us to understand this, because if the provision that was brought in after the Select Committee process, which has had quite a bit of coverage in the media, the point of that there will now be a power for police after someone's already been warned for wearing a gang patch. They can go right into their home, and even if it's in a drawer or a chest of drawers or in their wardrobe or under the bed, that's a penalty. But this one is saying that if they're not displaying it, that's not a penalty. So my concern is you're giving mixed messages to the gang community on what to do with their patches here. And so what is displayed? Is that pushing it up? That you sort of said already that's pushing it up against the window. But it does seem to be inconsistent with this new search power that you've introduced, where if they've got it in a drawer in their home, that's infringing the provisions that are in the bill. And also, I would really like to understand, because we haven't heard this in any of the debate, and I think the general public want to know this, What was the thing that changed your mind, Minister? So when in March, when police were asking for that additional power, did they discuss this car thing as well? Did that come up back in March? And what was it between then and sort of June, July, where you whacked this new search power in, and then now where we found there's an additional requirement to include a provision for cars and displaying from a car. Was there any sort of particular information or advice that you received from police or from other agencies that caused you to change your mind and include the later provision and this provision so late in the piece? I mean, this was legislation that was talked about right through the campaign period, which is nearly a year ago now. There would have been some significant considerations of how this policy would work, but it does seem from the sort of litany of repeat mistakes over this whole course that it has not been very well thought through in terms of how it's going to be implemented, and it doesn't really give a whole lot of trust and confidence in terms of how it's going to be effectively implemented if you're still coming up with new ideas so late in the piece. And so the point I think would be really useful to hear, just to recap, is it the display? What happens if you're sitting in the car? Is that where does the line lay in display? But also to understand exactly what the thought process was of the minister for this second thing in this whole course of legislation to be introduced outside of the normal course of policy and legislation making, because it does look like it's kind of policy on the hoof. You're just kind of throwing everything at the wall in the hope that it's going to look pretty tough, but it's kind of the perception as it's giving is a general sense of disorganisation in terms of understanding how police are going to effectively make this work in terms of law enforcement. So the main one, really keen to hear, patch in the car, what happens and what is classified as display. If they're wearing the patch in the car, is that okay or not? At what point is turning your back to the window classifying as display?
Oh my God, Ginny, you're having to sit down there and actually give us some goddamn good entertainment. I mean, as Kevin Ben said, Ginny Anderson should be on Dancing with the Stars.
She's certainly twerk better than David ever could.
Oh, look, Ginny, this is TikTok material, Ginny.
Just brilliant. Just brilliant.
And she does raise a really good point, as well as the roof. But she's bringing up a really important point there about
the car accident?
About the car incident, yeah. I mean, like, if you're in a car with kids, for example, somebody, one of the kids spills something in the back seat, you turn around to clean up the mess. What if you're driving down the street, you might have something that just, a red picture on the back of whatever it is you're wearing. Somebody goes, oh no, that looks like the bulldog from the mongrel mob. I've got to call the cops. There's so much room for bullshit to happen.
Or are they going to get the speed cameras that they're looking at deciding to whether they can pick you up talking and driving on your phone, like, hello, how's it going? Yeah, snap.
Mm-hmm.
Are they going to have, the same technology to try and catch game patches on the speed camera as you go past in Thorndon that sits there and scans every number plate going past to make sure that you're not breaking the law?
That was one of the most phenomenal features that Ginny's done in a while.
I know. Like, put it this way. I'm going to have fun editing this footage tomorrow. This one might be, Ginny twerking the gang law. Could be a very good title to make Ginny famous on It's in the Ballot.
We need to borrow that for a short video, Paul.
There could be some fun stuff.
Okay. So how can we top that? How can we top that? How can you top that?
I don't know. I mean, hey, are you gonna? I'm not sure. What's your relationship with Ginny like? Can you send her a text today? You did a good job on the gang bill on Thursday. I just saw you twerking.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm not sure how. Put it this way, I'm not going to text that. And I definitely sit down there and do have her phone number on my phone, but I will not be sitting down there telling her what a good job she's done. But I thought it could be quite funny, to sit there and go, oh, you've hit this topic line. Now, let's see what Goldie's response is, as Billy Jackson calls him.
Honourable Paul Goldsmith.
Yeah, thank you. Just in relation to the question of display, I've explained that already. I'm happy just to explain it one more time. In terms of the element to display will be case-specific and will need to be assessed in light of all relevant circumstances, including the degree of visibility, the size and placement of the gang insignia, and the nature of the public place and the overall context. So the purpose of the bill is around a display of gang insignia in a way that is causing fear and intimidation. So if somebody's wearing a gang badge in a car and it's not visible and they're not particularly displaying it, then that is not covered, or it's not an issue. It's only if the gang patch is being displayed, and in a way that that's I think reasonably straightforward. The member asked about the thought processes here, and I can explain the thought process, which is we're passing a bill that is designed to give extra tools to police in order to handle what has been a 50% increase in gang membership in the past 6 years, and to provide them with 4 new tools to push back against the negative influence of gangs in our community. And when the police come along, yes, late in the stage and say, well, actually, when we've looked at the details, there is a gap here that we think should be addressed, we decided to address it. And before passing the law, we've made this amendment in a belt and braces way to ensure that the legislation is as tight as it can be in order to ensure that the New Zealand members of the public can go about their lives without the fear and intimidation of gangs in their community.
Well, as they're responding to something like this is a new trend you sit there and deal with when you're talking about, you hold your jacket, or you hold a hoodie, or hold something that's unzipped, and you hold it down like that to sit there and hold it together while you sit there and do your speech. And yeah, I'm taking it off, it's bloody hot. But I thought I would sit down there and try my best to do the Goldsmith.
Have they, at any point in this process, actually defined what a gang is?
I'd love to know. I mean, hey, I might be an associate of multiple gangs because I sold petrol at BP Levin, but also I sold petrol to the cops.
I mean, they bring up the white supremacy thing, which makes a lot of sense, but what about something like Tū Tangata? Brian Tamaki's Destiny Church group that drive around on motorbikes with big leather patches and go out and intimidate people. That sounds like gang behavior. And we don't know if they're doing anything illegal, but we don't know anything specifically that gangs are doing without evidence either, like the mongrel mob or Black Power. We don't know what they're doing. We don't have evidence. Maybe the same lack of evidence implies that that's what Brian Tamaki's doing as well. There needs to be some kind of really specific definition in there.
Don't forget Brian Tamaki also holds councils hostage.
Yes, he does.
Yep.
See, you raise a really good point, Paul, that there is a very specific gang list, but then again, the other day there was about 800 people that got chopped off that gang list. But, that was all about sanitizing the list and, doing all that kind of thing.
And did they say, of that 800 people, how many of them were related to deaths?
That's a good point.
Considering, I do know that there was one particular year, this is quite a number of years ago, of the debts that MSD wrote off, 90% of the debts they wrote off were as a result of the client dying with no estate to pay the debt. Just to put some context in there this is a story by Yannicka Terrell back when I think Anne Tolley was the minister. Yeah, it was something in there, and it was about how tax fraud, tax overpayments get written off quite easily, whereas benefit overpayments don't, and the stuff that tends to get written off. And I asked more information, and she said the biggest one was as a result of death.
I mean, as a result of death does make sense,
Oh yeah, but it's like how that, but they only wrote it off because the person died. That's more what's been looked on there.